Hello everyone, it is Stephanie Ponteau. Welcome back to English class. I hope that you all are doing well and you're staying safe out there, and I hope you're enjoying this extra time at home with your family. So, let's get started on our lesson today. This is Division 2, Division Church Level 2 class. This is the class for Wednesday, June 3rd. This is part 2 of our class, and we're going to be on page 126. But before we go to page 126, let's do a little quick review of page 123. Okay, so on 123, it's the picture of the gifts that Celia received at her graduation party. Remember Celia? On page 122, she had a graduation party outside. So these are her gifts. So Celia, well, okay, before I start the lesson, I'm sorry, I forgot to tell you what we're going to learn in this lesson. In this lesson, we're going to continue in Unit 10. We're now in Lesson C, and we're going to learn about direct and indirect objects, and we're going to ask and answer questions with direct and indirect objects, okay? So that word object, you might be thinking, let me see, move so you can see it. Let me get my little pointer. That word object. An object receives something, okay? So let's look at Celia's presents on page 123. So the first one, a card. So one person brought Celia a card, right? Or you could say one person brought a card to Celia. You could say it either way. One person gave flowers to Celia, right? Yep, that's what's in the second picture, I think. Yep, and then third picture on page 123. One person gave Celia perfume, right? Okay, so these are the gifts. Celia received a card, flowers, and perfume. Now, at the graduation party, these are the gifts that Celia received. Now, remember we're talking about objects. Now, objects receive something. In grammar, which is what we're learning today, in grammar, the object receives something. Now, we've got a direct and an indirect object. The direct object receives the action from the verb. And then the indirect object receives the direct object. So in this sentence, one person brought Celia a card. Brought a card. So the card receives the action of the verb, brought. So that's the direct object. The direct object tells you what. And then who, the indirect object tells you who. So Celia received the card. The card received the action of the verb brought. Okay, that might be a little bit confusing. So just remember who and what. Okay, the direct object answers the question what, and the indirect object answers the question who. And you'll see this as we do some more examples, okay? It'll make a little bit more sense. All right, so we're going to learn about direct and indirect objects. So let's look on page 126. Let me put my pointer down and my top back on my pen because it dries out so fast. All right, page 126. All right, so as always, when we have these animated grammar charts, please pause this video and use the QR scanner on your phone and watch this. Watch this little video because it explains it very well. Those are very good little videos. So pause the video, use your QR scanner on your phone and watch that, and then come back and join me. All right, welcome back. I'm sure you watched the video, but they are very helpful. So let's go ahead and start the lesson here. Lesson C, Tim gave Mary a present. Exercise 1, grammar focus. Direct and indirect objects. A direct object answers the question, what? And in this case, the what is a card. But in this example, it's a present. An indirect object says who receives the direct object. See? The what in this sentence was the card. The indirect object was Celia because she received the direct object. Okay, so just remember that the indirect object receives the direct object. And the direct object answers the question what, the indirect object answers the question who. Okay, all right, so now let's read the statements in our grammar chart here. Okay, all right, so we're on page 126, the grammar chart at the top. Tim gave a present to Mary. And you see how it's labeled? The direct object answers the question what. So Tim gave a present to Mary. So present is the direct object, that's the what. And to who? Mary. That's the indirect object, okay? Second sentence, Tim bought a present for Mary, for her. Tim bought a present for her. Present is the direct object. For who? Her. All right, and then let's go to the next chart. Tim gave Mary a present. Mary is the indirect object. It's just a different way of saying it, where the indirect object appeared in the sentence first, but it's saying the same thing. Tim gave Mary a present, and Mary is the indirect object. Present is still the direct object. And then the last sentence, Tim bought her a present. Okay? All right, and then let's look at these little tip boxes here and let's read that. So irregular verbs. And in this lesson, we're using these irregular verbs. So that's why we're going over them for present and past. So irregular verbs. Buy, the past tense is bought. Give, past tense is gave. Send, the past tense is sent. And then write, the past tense is wrote. Now let's look at the next little bubble there, giving us some more grammar information, some tips. Give plus to. So whenever you use give, you use to and you buy for. So give plus to. Give to someone or buy for someone. You wouldn't say buy to or give for. You would say give to, buy for. Okay? All right, so let's practice that. Okay, well, before we do that, okay, yeah, we're good. I went over everything. All right, so we're going to practice now. Exercise 2, practice. Write. Look at Joe's to-do list. What did he do yesterday? And we're going to write sentences. Okay, so this is a good way to practice using the past tense of those irregular verbs that I talked about. So this is Joe's to-do list. So to-do list, this is what he had to do. Buy flowers for Sylvia. Buy a card for Nick. That's the second thing that was on his to-do list. The third, write a letter to Pam. Buy a cake for Mary and Judy. Give roses to Eva. Send an invitation to Paul. Send some money to David. And give a ride to Sue. And you notice we in all his everything on his to-do list, if he said he had to buy something, he used for, and if he had to give something, he used to. All right? Just like the rule said up there. So remember that. Okay, so what we're going to do, this is what did he do yesterday? So you're answering that question over here. And because we're asking what did he do yesterday, you're going to need to use the past tense of those verbs, right? Okay, so I'm going to write these on the board for you. And they did the first one for us. All right, so let's do number one. I'm not going to write number one since it's already in the book for you. Okay, so first thing on Joe's to-do list, buy flowers for Sylvia. And you see everything on the to-do list is checked off. That means he did it, right? He did it yesterday. So we're going to use the past tense for buy. First thing on the list is buy flowers for Sylvia. Number one, Joe bought flowers for Sylvia. And we use the past tense for buy, which is bought. And all you need to do is look in the irregular verbs chart right there. And those are things irregular verbs, you just have to memorize them and know what they are, okay? All right, so number two, the second thing on the to-do list, it says buy a card for Nick. So that was yesterday. So the past tense to answer the question, what did he do yesterday? Joe bought a card for Nick. So let me write that up here for you. Number two. Now, if we were in class, you know what would be happening, right? I'd be calling on you, asking you to come to the board and write these sentences. But since we're not, I guess I'll have to write them on the board. So Joe bought, which is the past tense for buy, a card. Did he buy a card to Nick or a card for Nick? Yes, he bought a card for Nick. Because you buy for and you give to. All right, number three. What was on the to-do list? Number three. The third thing on the to-do was write a letter to Pam. So what did Nick do last? What was the third thing? Joe. I keep getting his name mixed up. What was the third thing that Joe did yesterday based on his to-do list? Joe wrote a letter to Pam. Joe wrote a letter to Pam. Okay, number four. What was the first thing on his to-do list? The fourth thing. 1, 2, 3, 4. Buy a cake for Mary and Judy. So Joe bought, right, the past tense of buy. Joe bought a cake for Mary and Judy. Okay. Number 5. Joe give or gave? Yes, past tense of give is gave. So Joe gave roses to Eva. Okay. Number 6. Okay, number 6. Send an invitation to Paul. It has a check mark over it next to it, so it's already done. It's in the past. Joe sent an invitation to Paul. Okay. Number 7. Send some money to David. So Joe sent some money to David. Okay, and the last one, number 8. Yes, this is where you will be walking up to the board and writing these for me. And this would be much more fun if we were in class. I know this is a little boring. I'm sorry. All right, Joe gave a ride to Sue. Okay. All righty, so, okay, so that's everything for 2A. Now, we went through Joe's to-do list, and each item was checked, so it was in the past. So we wrote what Joe did yesterday, and we made sure that we use the past tense of our irregular verbs. All right? And let's see. So now let's talk about in each sentence. I don't think we need to go through all of them, but, excuse me. Joe bought Nick what? Remember, direct object is what, and the indirect object is who. So what, I'm going to put D-O, who, I-D-O, okay? All right, so in sentence number 1, what was bought? The card. And who got the card? Who received the card? Nick. So the card is the direct object. Nick is the indirect object. So this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to get my red and blue Sharpies. And I'm going to make the direct object red and the indirect object blue. So direct object red, just so you can remember. And the indirect object, I'm going to underline with the blue, okay? So the direct object is red in this sentence. Underline it. The indirect object is Nick because he received the direct object, okay? So, number 3, Joe wrote a letter to Pam. What letter? Who got that letter? Pam. So Pam is the indirect object, okay? Joe bought a cake. What? Direct object is the cake. And the indirect object is Mary and Judy. All right, so you see how that goes? All right, so roses, direct object, Eva, indirect object, who received the roses, invitation, and Paul, money, and David. This is the what and the who. The what is the ride Who received the ride? Sue. Okay, so that's our practice answering questions and using direct and indirect objects. So let's quickly go to exercise, the second part of exercise 2A. We're supposed to complete the sentences. Use a pronoun for the indirect object. All right, so number 1. I'm going to have to erase this, so if you need to, hopefully you've checked yours and make sure they match what I wrote up here. So I'm going to quickly erase this so I can write the other sentences for you. And I'm going to give you some good homework to practice the direct and indirect objects. I think it can be a little confusing. All right, so complete the conversations, and we're going to use a pronoun for the indirect object. Now remember, the indirect object is the who receives the direct object. So number 1, what did Joe buy Sylvia? Joe bought her flowers. So we're using the pronoun her in place of Sylvia, okay? Number 2, what did Joe buy Nick? Joe bought him, because Nick is usually a man's name. So we use the pronoun him for a male or male. All right, so Joe bought him a card, right? If you look back up at number 2 in part A of this exercise. All right, so number 3, what did Joe write Pam? Joe wrote her a letter. Number 4, what did Joe buy Mary and Judy? Look up at number 4 in 2A. Joe bought them a cake. Them is the plural. Since it's 2 people, it's more than one, so you use them. So Joe bought them a cake. Number 5, what did Joe give Eva? Look up here at number 5. Joe gave her roses. Number 6, what did Joe send Paul? Joe sent him an invitation. Number 7, what did Joe send David? Joe sent him, the pronoun says David is a male, some money. Okay, and then number 8, what did Joe give Sue? Joe gave, what would be the pronoun for Sue? Her, because Sue is a female. Joe gave her what? Look at number 8 in exercise 2A. He gave her a ride. Okay, so I went over a little bit in this class. I think I covered everything. So yes, so remember pronoun him is for males, men or boys, and the pronoun her is for females or girls or women, okay? So we practice using those pronouns. So did we do this? We learned what a direct and an indirect object is, and we answered the questions just now. We just answered questions in this part of the exercise. So that is it for this class. Thank you for your attention. Take care, bye-bye, and I will see you in the next class. Don't forget, put a comment on the YouTube video for me, okay? All right.